Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the Art of Winning. Today, we got a special guest, my brother and managing partner of Valkyrie Investment Group. And today, we talked about picking a market to invest in. So, one of the primary things we do at Valkyrie Investment Group is find booming markets so we can find really good investment properties in those markets, right? And so, Christopher and I kind of dive into how he researches and finds those markets across the US, right? And what free resources he's found that are really effective at pinpointing, where you want to invest, where people are moving to, where jobs are going, that kind of thing. So you know where to pick your next investment property. And this goes for short-term, for long-term rentals, for multifamily, self-storage. Like a lot of this stuff is tied together. So I think this will benefit a lot of investors out there, real estate investors primarily, but other investors looking for some place to put their capital, diversify out of stocks, bonds, mutual funds. Kind of helps you conceptualize why and how you can be profitable as a real estate investor. So I hope that helps. Reach out to us if you have questions. And if you ever want to get involved on one of our deals, we're always working on new investment opportunities. So, for example, by the time this podcast comes out, we'll have closed on 4 or 5 different luxury Airbnbs, as well as 3 or 4 apartment syndications, and hopefully an RV park and a mobile home park. So we're always working on this stuff. Reach out if you have questions. Join our investor club if you want to get notified of new deals. And always happy to jump on a call and go over how we can work together. All right, so let's get to the show. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to The Art of Winning with your host, Ashton. Today, I brought my brother back on. We're going to talk about real estate investing, in particular, what markets we're really interested, we're really bullish on in this time. Whether you're a real estate investor or not, you're probably going to benefit from being in one of these markets. So it's good to know this stuff. We're very bullish on real estate, of course, because that's what our business is around. And we realize the benefit of how much wealth can be made in real estate. So Christopher Levarek, my brother, welcome back to the show. Glad to have you on. You are the first guest, and now it's good to have you back on, man.
Hey, thanks. Good to be here.
Yeah.
Appreciate the call back.
Yeah, and if this is your first time listening to Christopher, Christopher and I we're managing partners of Valkyrie Investment Group, a real estate investment platform that invests in booming and emerging markets around the U.S. And we buy multifamily apartment complexes as well as luxury Airbnbs. And then we, force the appreciation by adding value and growing the rents and creating cash flow and working with other investors. And it's a really cool thing that we get to do. So it's all about that passive income and living the life that you want to live. But a huge part of that is in investing, finding the right markets to do that in, right? So Christopher put together a really cool, or he's been to a couple meetups this year or conventions this year where they talk a lot about this. And he's going to share with us what he learned there. Christopher.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, I'll hop in. So what I usually write a blog at the beginning of the year, top markets 2022, top markets 2021. And I get this data for free from a lot of different sources. Some of it's from meetups, some of it's online. But it's interesting. It gets a lot of attention. I do the same on a Bigger Pockets post and every year, and it gets a lot of attention. And really, this information is out there for you to go find, and it'll give you kind of a head start on where to invest or where to passively invest. So if you're jumping into a syndication and they mention a market you've never heard of, and you find it, it's not on any data sources that perhaps you want to, question why they're going into those markets. Like what is their reasoning behind it? Or if you're an active investor, this is definitely going to help you because you're going in there, without the expertise of a passive, investing team behind you as if you're a passive investor. So you definitely need this kind of information. So I'm just going to go through some of the sources and where the top markets for 2022 are listed for these sources. And a lot of these have a lot of big, expensive teams and systems for finding the best markets. And typically they're looking at demographics, population growth, employment. They're looking at job growth. And you can go look those numbers up, or you can very quickly, get one of these free sources and, get a jump on the system, so to speak. So,
And that kind of brings up a good
go ahead.
point. That brings up a good point too. A lot of people, when they get into real estate investing, they understand the benefits, they understand the tax benefits, the passive income, all that, but they usually start in their local market, right? Which is great because that's a great place to get your feet wet. But the downside to that is if you're in a bad market, it's going to be a little bit tougher. The growth isn't going to be as good. You might run into different types of landlord tenant laws that are not favorable to the owner of the real estate. So what we always say is invest where it makes sense and live where you want. And when you know your markets and you've done your market research, it makes it so much more so much easier, right? So, and then of course you got to put a team together on the ground, but that's actually not as hard as you think it is. But all right, Christopher, let's hear it.
Cool. So yeah, like a big one. Everybody knows Zillow, right? Zillow, where I'm buying houses. So if you're interested in a residential market, Zillow often put out a top markets for 2022. In here, they have Tampa, Florida, Jacksonville, Florida, Raleigh, North Carolina, San Antonio, Texas, and Charlotte, North Carolina. Or sorry, Charlotte, North Carolina. And, so those are some ideas you want to look at. People are moving there to move into residential housing. And coincidentally enough, we're doing an apartment project, of course, in San Antonio. And I say coincidentally, there's nothing coincidence about it. When the data points to a certain direction, we follow that data as well. So, another cool thing is there you have these big players putting out the information as well. Neil Bawa, he's called the mad scientist, and he puts out this wonderful presentation, usually in February and March, where he's picking top markets. And so hats off to Neil Bawa for putting out that information. It's freely available. But Neil Bawa has a great pick. He's also an apartment syndicator, if you don't know. He does he does a lot of different projects throughout the year. But his top picks for 2022 were Tampa, Florida, San Antonio, Texas. Oh, you catching the drift there. Knoxville, Tennessee, Killeen, Texas, Asheville, North Carolina. So that was Neil Bawa's top picks. So you can see the Tampa, Florida, San Antonio, Texas. You're going to see the Floridas come up a lot. Texas is going to come up a lot. Do you have anything on that, Ashton?
Yeah, well, I mean, I have my idea, but why do you think those markets are popping up so much?
Well, I mean, the Sun Belt is a great place to invest right now, but it's really because it's warm. People are moving to where it's warmer. They're moving there for business reasons, tax purposes. A big cause of the remote work allowed people to move where they want to live, and they don't necessarily just want to live in New Jersey or in New York where it's freezing, or unless they have a reason to be there. So being able to work remotely, they can move out. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I was that's what I was thinking. Is it's really about following the jobs, and a lot of the businesses are moving to these states that have better tax laws, and that where it's cost of doing business is cheaper, cost of buying a property is cheaper, the cost of living is cheaper. It just kind of makes sense. But I was curious between Zillow and Neil Bawa, because I know Neil Bawa is an apartment syndicator. He buys the large multifamilies, but Zillow, they're focused more on residential. So that's the difference, right? Or was Neil Bawa?
Yes, totally.
Okay, so Neil Bawa wasn't focused on residential at all.
Targeting more commercial apartment investing primarily. He does do smaller like quads now, I believe, which are more like luxuries. Okay. But he focuses more on apartment investing. But that to be fair, it's all residential based. So people are moving to buy homes, or they're moving to buy or to rent. It's population growth. It's still those terms. So I'd say multifamily residential, probably you see some alignment. There are going to be some differences, of course. But if you were to try to compare, like, I don't know, storage facilities to how residential markets are doing, maybe that doesn't correlate as much. And I'm just kind of taking that as an example. Yeah. But yeah.
No,
So
that makes sense. That makes sense. And yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. A renter is a renter is a renter. And they're, as we've seen over the last 5, 10 years, like less people are buying homes. And
yeah.
people want to be able to move more, right? They don't want to be stuck in one place. And I think that's part of it. You see more of these people working from home and traveling, and they don't want to buy a house. So if you're investing in real estate market and you're providing affordable housing, where do you want to do it? In the place that there are jobs, right? So I definitely see that.
Right.
All that growth makes a lot of sense. It's cool that it shows up on both Zillow and Neil Baba. I wonder if he used some of that data.
He does, and he kind of goes through his data. So another big one he'll use is like Realtor, Realtor.com, and these
Okay.
are all freely available, guys. So you can wait for this information to come out from guys like us or with Neil or even Brad Sumrock. We'll go into some of his stuff later. Those are big apartment syndicators. Or you can go find it. Realtor is more, of course, positioned for residential growth, just like Zillow is. But I'll jump right in. Their top five are actually slightly different than Zillow. So you might be able, I like to pick the ones that match different data sources. So if I see the same name coming up, I like to dig deeper in that area. But for Realtor, they got top housing markets positioned for growth in 2022. Salt Lake City, Utah is number one. And
Ah,
that's not the first time I've heard that. Utah, Provo, they've been blowing up as far as price points and affordability, attractability. So, of course, second one you might know, Boise City, Idaho. Idaho was getting some attention last year. It's still on Realtor's list, however. Spokane, Washington,
oh, wow.
Indianapolis, Indiana, and then the number 5 is Columbus, Ohio.
Hmm.
So Columbus has been really good for population growth. We've been in Columbus for 2 years now. We have a apartment complex there as well.
That's pretty cool. That's interesting. That's so different. I wonder how they run their data. And all this is based
Mm-hmm.
off of last year's sales, though, right? How current is this? Are we talking? Do you know?
Yeah, there's always a lagging element to these data sources, right? So depending which one you're going to pick, if you're going to look at some of the bigger groups, like the apartment syndicators, typically they have access to CoStar and some of these, paid data sources that they're getting this information. If you're getting it free from Zillow and Realtor, they could be 3-4 months behind the ball, because they're getting that data, analyzing it, putting it in a report, and you're getting it finally for 2022. The one that's very behind the ball, but I still like it anyway, is the U-Haul.
Okay.
And so what U-Haul does, it tracks like the top 25 US growth cities for 2021, and they put it out in January. And what it lets you know is, okay, this is where people were moving in 2021. So it's a major lagging indicator, right? Because, all those people moved already. However,
Yeah.
it typically means they're going to keep moving in that direction. They're not going to change it. So it gives you some indicators. So it's a really cool one. I mean, it's so funny because we invest in a lot of these places, and there's reasons why we use this data. But it's cool when you see the data line up on lagging indicators to something you were already in.
Yeah.
So U-Haul top 25. I'll just go through the top 5. So this is top growth cities that people moved to in 2021. Kissimmee, Florida is number 1. That's where
Boom.
we have a short-term rental. How about that? Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina is number 2. We have
Boom.
a lot of properties there. Palm Bay, Melbourne, Florida, Northport, Florida, and number 5 is always a surprise to me, but Madison, Wisconsin. So
Oh,
apparently there must be some great job growth there, or people are just really enjoying those snow weather.
yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting, right?
Yeah, it is. And I want to point out something too. So, we talk about job growth, we talk about businesses moving a place and then people investing in it. But I want to remind people that there's sometimes when you try to get in too early, it can be dangerous. And I'll just remind people of the story of, I can't remember what city it was, but in New York, when Amazon said they were moving there, and a bunch of real estate investors invested in the city. And then Amazon's like, nope, I'm going to go to North Carolina. And, property value jumped when Amazon was saying they were going to go there, but it dropped like 30, 40%. as soon as they said they were leaving. So, or they were going to North Carolina. So it's kind of nice to have some of these lag indicators, right? Because you know it's on that upward curve already. If you try to get in too early, like I regret that we didn't get in on Austin's market, and now it's probably too late because you're going to pay over, much higher prices. I think some places in Florida are like that. But imagine if you had gotten in early, right near where Tesla built their factory or Microsoft built their $5 billion campus or whatever, right? So that I mean, you kind of gotta, if you have insider knowledge and you know what's happening, then it makes sense. But if you're just going off the rumors, then it can be kind of dangerous, right?
Yeah, we followed some other people who went into Kissimmee, and we were looking. I think Kissimmee was number. The cool thing about U-Haul is they'll let you know where they were the year before. So the year before Kissimmee in 2020 was number 2, and so we bought our property in 2021. Yes, but already, the same properties that we bought for are already going $150,000 more expensive.
Yeah.
In less than 6-7 months or 12 months, and the whole market has been really good. But if you buy in a market before it's popping, you can ride that wave up just the more. So,
and then like something to add on that too is like if you get in the path of progress, right? Like we know that maybe Austin is just on fire right now, but it's so expensive to buy in Austin. But if you were within commuter range, right, it might be a very competitive deal. So to invest within like 25 to 30-minute driving of that market. I mean, that's where our apartment complex is in Dallas, right? It's 25, 30 minutes away from Dallas, and that's why it does so well. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I'll go into Brad Sumrock's top 22. He does a great presentation every February. If you haven't heard about him, he calls himself the apartment king. One of the first conferences we ever went to, me and Ashton, was in Dallas. It was Brad Sumrock's, I don't know, I think it was called Escape the Rat Race or something like that.
That's right.
But really, really great event he puts on. And then he also, he helps a lot of people learn how to do syndication. And he does, of course, a lot of investing himself with partners. But his top 22 regions, and you'll hear him again, it's Florida, Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville, South Florida. No surprise there. That's one of his top picks. Arizona, Phoenix, and Tucson. I'm in Phoenix. It's definitely very hot here, both
literally,
environmentally and price wise. Yeah. And of course, Texas Triangle. And we've talked about this before. If you don't know what the triangle is, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Austin. It's that Interstate 45, I believe it is. But yeah, the whole area there is hot. I believe Brad's out of Dallas, so they know that area really well. But it's very, we're in Dallas. We're now in San Antonio, and there's a reason why. The data supports it.
Yeah.
But then he goes in, he's got some top 5 emerging markets, which are really interesting. And they're based on like rent growth, employment, occupancy levels, price points, cap rates. Are they business friendly? That's how he buys apartments. And that's typically how we buy apartments too, based on a lot of those. But these are some interesting top 5 emerging markets. So it's Greenville, South Carolina. I've heard that come up quite a bit, actually.
Yeah.
Omaha, Nebraska. Interesting, right? Pensacola, Florida. Savannah, Georgia. And Reno, Nevada. So there's some emerging markets to look out. Probably on the cusp of, maybe they're not there, but in Brad's eyes and with the data, they're looking like they're on their way. So.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there are so many data sources. What I advise you to do is when you go through something like this, even if you're not a data guy, just make a spreadsheet and be like, okay, Realtor, column A, Zillow, column B, Brad says column C, and then draw down the list and then highlight the cities that match up the same color out of, 5 data sources. And if you've got San Antonio coming up over and over and over, then that could be a really good reason for you to look deeper there, or possibly for you to check one box when you're doing due diligence with a syndication group on why they picked there. It's, if you got multiple data sources saying the same thing, it could be a good reason.
I mean, that brings up a good point. Whenever we do a deal, that's one of the things. Those are the three things we look for, right? Like who's on the team, what's their experience, and how many deals they've done, all that kind of stuff. Because that's probably the most important part. But the second coming right after that is the market. Like, why did you pick that market? If somebody came to me with a deal in LA and they had the best team in the world, I'd still hesitate, or New York for that matter, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, like, yeah, definitely. I think some of this stuff is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you start in this area, you pick your market as a passive or active investor. The market can set you on the right path. It's not the first, or it's not the only thing you need to do. You need to look at the team, of course, and you need to look at the asset type as well. Is it the type of asset investment that you supports your strategy? And is the data supporting that asset? If you look at data from residential and then you go buy, I don't know, a boat park, or you go buy,
Boat storage,
a
yeah,
self-storage unit, or maybe retail, or is that going to align to the data you looked at? And if you don't want to do all this, that's cool too. Just partner with a group, then make sure, do a little due diligence, ask them why they chose that city.
yeah.
Um,
So we'll
so
so we'll make it right now. So top three: team asset or team market asset (TMA). Yeah. So make
there
sure
you go. We
there you go.
coined it.
Yeah.
You heard it here first.
It would be cool to do too, and I don't know if you're done, but it would be interesting because it's going to be different. So a lot of people getting into the Airbnb space, which I think is a great space, especially if you're beginning, because now you have an investment property, it cash flows really well, and you get to use it. But it'd be really cool to see the data for that, like
Mhm.
what are the emerging markets for Airbnb, and because that, like, when people are trying to design their life, like I want to be able to vacation in places that I own, right? I want to own property in places that I want to vacation. The Airbnb model is very good, but you're probably not, like, I don't know, for me anyway, I want a vacation in like really nice in the mountains or on the beach or something. And so those might not be these big cities that we're seeing this massive growth in. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Yeah. So I wonder
Yeah, it's some
how.
different data.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see like how many tourists pass through there in a year, right? Like we invested in Kissimmee, Florida, and I think the biggest metric we looked at was 75 million tourists pass through there a year, and that was during COVID. And so,
Mhm.
I mean, that to me that makes sense if you have a vacation property there and you're renting it out. Um, but yeah, that'd be an interesting. Maybe we can do another podcast about that. Uh,
Yeah, I'm
so
down.
so far you've done Brad Sumrock, you've done Neil Bawa, Zillow, Realtor, and U-Haul. That's where you've gotten all your data so far, right?
Yep. There's another one called IRR.com. It's more for commercial. They put out a lot of reports. I like using them as well. But they'll go through, these are the top markets in expansion for 2022.
Mm.
And IRR stands for Integra Realty Resources. Check them out. You can have a free login with them. But yeah, they have a whole 40-page report on what the markets are going to do for 2022. And in expansion, though, if you were going to look at like the different markets, it's much of what we already said. The Boise, Idaho, Charlotte, North Carolina, Columbus, Ohio, San Antonio, Texas, Tampa, Florida. So you get a lot of those correlating cities that are in expansion and are good to pick. And sometimes those markets in expansion are going to have the highest prices often, right?
Yeah.
So you're kind of behind the ball if you can get early in, then you might have a better chance of riding the wave up. But that's the hardest part. If you go into a market in expansion, though, at least you're assured that you're not in decline,
Yeah.
and you're not like it's not a market that doesn't have demand. So, but they do a really great report. Who else do I have? I have a PowerPoint presentation I'm going to do on this later, so that's what I'm kind of using. I think Freddie Mac put out one top 10. They have Phoenix, Las Vegas, Tampa, Tucson, and Albuquerque. So
Mm.
very similar stuff coming from these
They have three
different
Arizona.
reports, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have three
Yeah.
Arizona. I don't know who they had to pay to. No,
Yeah,
I'm
right.
just kidding.
Tucson, Phoenix, and what was the other one?
They had Las Vegas, Nevada.
Oh, Las
They
Vegas.
only
That's
have two
okay.
Arizona.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
Phoenix and Tucson have been hot for a while now. I think Phoenix had around 30% rent growth last year.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So it's crazy for the people renting here. Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine.
Yeah.
It's good if you own the place, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's great for the economy. There's a lot of growth going on here, but yeah, rent has been amazing. People are just, turning apartments and improving them, adding value, but increasing rents. Yeah. So
Yeah.
a lot of growth.
Yeah. That's cool. I wonder how all this is going to pan out, because you have all these people moving south into the Sun Belt, and all this growth plus all the inflation lately, the prices of housing going up, and then now the mortgage rates going up. I wonder how this is all going to stem. I mean, did they talk about that at any of the conventions you went to? Like, what do they think is going to happen?
Yeah, they did, to a degree. So a lot of people don't think anything's going to happen for the next 2 or 3 years.
Oh, wow.
The Federal Reserve is raising the interest rates to combat inflation, but they're also, to a degree, trying to slow down people from being outpriced from homes. The idea, and to some of it, is if we increase interest rates, then home buying will slow down, or people will not, buy as much homes. Home prices decline, and then people are able to buy home prices again. It's kind of backward thinking because there's just so much capital in the market right now that people, especially investors, are still going to be buying properties to rent because the rent growth is so high. They're going to be buying all the property for the next 2-3 years, and that's where that kind of idea comes from. These interest rates won't affect anybody, especially not the investors. They'll keep buying until it doesn't make sense as an investment anymore. And that, even at 7%, 6-7% interest rates, a lot of these properties will still make sense if you have 12 to 30% rent growth.
Yeah.
They still make sense as an investment. In markets where you'll see it are where those don't make sense. So where it's still expensive to buy because interest rates are high and there's no investors investing in there, then, the prices of the homes will probably fall, and the residential purchaser could afford something in that area. But typically in those areas, people have more affordability anyway right now. So I don't know, the idea that a lot of people are on is that the Federal Reserve will raise interest rates until the economy starts to buckle, because everything kind of buckles a little when the interest rates go up.
Yeah.
And that's because it affects a lot of different things across the economy, including like the bond market. So when they start doing that, a lot of people think they'll just back off and start printing capital more. And so we'll go back into the kicking the can down the road. Now, that's why a lot of people are still investing. It's to combat inflation, but a lot of people don't think that a lot of investment teams aren't seeing this drop in demand for rental properties. And then they're not seeing enough efforts on the other side to make them more affordable that is going to counter that in any way. So it makes sense to keep investing in rental properties. It's going to take a big change to make, these properties more affordable now to what they were before. It just, there's so much lack of supply, right? Like 2 years we've gone by with basically supply chain halted. So nobody's been building homes.
I read somewhere we're like 5 million. We're at a deficit of like 5 million homes across the U.S.
Yeah, so it's everyone thinks it's interest rates, but it's really just supply and demand.
Yeah.
So guess what? When supply is low on a product, yes, it's more expensive.
Yeah.
You
know what I found interesting? I read an article at Tricon. I don't know if you're familiar with them, Tricon. And then, of course, Blackstone. They're large investment firms. I mean, they have several different arms, but So banks and insurance companies put their money in there. So when you put your money in the bank, if they're not using your money to loan it to other people, they're using it to invest in other things, right? And that's why you get that less than 1%, growth on your savings account. Insurance companies do the same thing. They put their money in something, in some type of investment platform, so it keeps growing. You don't get to see any of that until you crash your car, and then you have to claim insurance. But even then, they probably fight it. But anyway, all that to say, they're putting their money in these big companies, Tricon and Blackstone. Tricon announced, I think it was like last month, that they're trying to buy 800 homes a month, residential homes for rentals a month across the Sun Belt. So, and that's spelled Tricon. You can look it up. And I just read another article that Jeff Bezos is partnering with a couple people a couple other companies do the same thing, but they're going to do it in blockchain technology. So people can invest and buy shares of the blockchain that owns it, I guess. I'm not sure. I don't understand that technology all that well, but it's interesting when you think about it. Some of the biggest investors in the world are buying real estate. But yeah.
Yeah. And they're, when you have that big of a demand for rental property and rent growth is so high, you're going to create all those kind of new purchases or investments that are going on. And they're building build to rent. They're building huge communities that are just to rent. Just like they would do short-term rentals, they're doing the same long-term rentals. They are build to rent communities. And it's because the demand is so much there. So they're not building these for people to buy as live-in homes. And that's the way the economy works. If there's a demand, people will find a way to supply it. It's just, the problem with residential properties, it takes a little longer to build out for people. And if you're making more money renting it, why would they build it for living?
Yeah.
So it's interesting. We'll see where it goes. You can follow the data, you can follow the markets and keep investing to combat inflation and where it makes sense.
Yeah.
That's the best case, try to take the best approach. Right now, a lot of people don't see a lessening of demand for this. So, and there's a shortage of supply.
Well,
and
here's
there's
the
also
thing.
the argument that a lot of millennials are buying. So there's continued demand is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And the interesting thing too is like, oh man, I think I lost my train of thought. Hold on a second. They're not building workforce housing, right? So when people build new housing, it's Class A housing, which means it's the highest, you're going to get the highest market rent in that area because it's brand new. But like people like us, we buy used because you can add more value. Can you create more equity by adding value and bump those rents? But it's still workforce housing. It's not Class A housing, right? We're buying C and B and C class housing as opposed to like A class housing, which is brand new. So even if they do build 5 million homes in the next 365 days and replenish, get us back up to what we need to be and across America, there's still going to be a demand for workforce housing. So
yeah, it's a problem. Affordable housing has always been in shortage, and often when they do the rent control stuff, they're trying to help out the tenant, but inflation affects everyone, and it inflates all prices, not just milk prices or gas prices. So the landlord's costs go up too. And guess what they do? They raise their rents. And so then the tenant must pay additional rents. And so everybody is feeling the inflation. And that's why prices are rising everywhere. That's what inflation is, rising prices.
yeah.
But it's here's the thing. If you can't afford where you're at, you might have to need to look into moving. It's uncomfortable, but in an economy like this, where you're living outside of your means, you might have to move, and that's just the name of the game with where we're at in the economy. The thing is, if there is a demand and someone can pay it in a market, someone will supply that.
Yeah,
and that's typically an apartment investor, an apartment syndicator, a landlord of some kind. They're just not going to offer a lower price because they're helping someone out. There are some that do that, but ultimately the landlord's then the one hurting and losing money.
They lose money, and then the bank loses money, and it goes around and around.
And then the bank takes the property.
And then puts it for sale at a discount.
And then everybody's out of it. a place to live. So yeah.
All right. Well,
Stuff.
to kind of round this out, give us your top 5 states off everything you said.
Yeah. So from what I see and what I've been doing, and we're kind of doing this already, but definitely Florida, definitely Texas. I like North Carolina. I think it's a great spot. There's a lot of cool areas there, both for vacation and for living. And it's upcoming in a lot of employment going there. So medical and tech. But so yeah, North Carolina, Florida, Arizona, I like because I'm here, right? So let's see, if I was going to pick a 5th one, where would I go? I think that South Carolina would be a good place to start checking out. There's a lot of people already there, but I've heard of Georgia being good too. And everybody knows Atlanta. Atlanta's been the top hot market. But everybody's going to Florida, but guess where they're driving through to get there? They're going through South Carolina. Are they going through Georgia?
Yeah.
I'd have to look at a map, but I'm pretty sure. So when they're going through those areas and they see those attractable prices, or let's say they're even just, Googling their way down in the different markets, they're going to see that South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, they're going to be underpriced compared to when it comes to Florida. So I think those markets are really good to look at as well.
Yeah. Well, this has been awesome, Christopher. Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming on and talking about this. You have any
Thanks for having
thoughts,
me,
man?
No, man, I've been speaking for a while. I think, if you don't know where all these data sources are, we have a blog that has this all. So you can check that out. You can reach out to us, but if it feels like too much, you can work with the team, you can work with partners to do this. You don't have to do it all yourself. But I've said a lot. I've said my piece, my top markets. So
all right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, man. I appreciate you coming on. And thank you, everybody else. If you want more information, our website is www.valkyriegroup.com, spelled VALKERE group.com. And you can find the blogs he's talking about, and we have a lot of the data in there. But whether you use it to work with us or work to do it on your own, we wish you the best of luck, and we'll look forward to talking on the next one. Take care.
All right. Thank you so much for tuning into today's podcast. We hope you found the information and insights shared valuable and thought-provoking. And if you liked this show, please subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. And until next time, stay winning, stay curious, and crush life.